Alright, notes number 2, graphing quadratic functions and the axis of symmetry and the vertex. So we're going to be graphing these and then looking at two properties of these graphs, the axis of symmetry and the vertex. Now, when we graph a quadratic function, the graph is called a parabola. P-A-R-A-B-O-L-A, parabola. Now, the parabola, it's in the shape of a U, and it's either opening up or down. So once we start graphing these, you're gonna see what a parabola looks like. Now, all of the parabolas have a geometric property called symmetry, meaning if the graph's folded in half, each half will match the other half exactly. So it'll fold on top of the other side. So if you fold the graph in half, one side's gonna match right up to the other side. Now, this vertical line containing the fold line, this is called the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry. Now, when we go to graph a quadratic function, we're going to talk about these 4 steps. What we want to do is we want to write the equation for the axis of symmetry. And to do that, we use a simple formula. All right, the formula, it's negative. You get negative b over 2a, and it's x equals. So x equals negative b over 2a. So that's the formula for the axis of symmetry. And then step 2 says find the coordinate of the vertex. Well, once we have the axis of symmetry, that's going to give us our x value. So we get the x equals, and then we substitute that x value back into the equation and solve it for y. And we'll get our point xy, and that will give us the vertex. So we'll be able to identify if it's a maximum or a minimum, and then we can easily graph this function. So if we look at this first example, it's y equals x squared plus 3. Well, to find the axis of symmetry, well, we have our formula, which is x equals negative b over 2a. Well, if we look at this, we know that a is 1, b is 0, and c is 3, going back to our quadratic formula labeling a, b, and c. So a is 1, b is 0, and c is 3. So we just plug these values in. So we get x equals negative b is going to be negative 0 divided by 2a, well, 2 times 1. Well, it's going to give us x equals negative 0 over 2. And negative 0 divided by 2, which is 0 divided by 2, is 0. So x equals 0. So now we know the x value, we know the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is 0. To find the vertex, we have y equals x squared plus 3. We know that x equals 0. So we're going to plug 0 in for x. So we get y equals 0 squared plus 3, y equals 0 plus 3, and y equals 3. So now we know that the vertex is the point 0, 3. So we have our vertex, which is the point 0, 3, and the axis of symmetry is the line x equals 0. Well, if we know that the vertex is 0, 3, we can graph that. So 0, then up 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is our vertex. Now, the way to tell if this is a minimum or a maximum, we look at the x squared. So this value of a, so we look at this value of a. So if a is positive, we have this becomes a minimum point. So that means our graph is going to go up. So if a is positive, it's a minimum. And if a is negative, it's a maximum. So we're going to talk about that also. So when we look at this, a is positive, so we have our vertex of 0, 3, and we know that this is a minimum point. So this is our minimum point, meaning everything is going to be higher than that, so it's all going to go up. So now the way that we can do this is we can take our graphing calculator, and we can plug in our value. We can go to y equals, and we can type in this equation, which is x squared plus 3. Now we can look at our graph. So we see the graph, and then we can look at our table so that we can get our values to graph this. So and 0, 3, that 0, 3 is our vertex. So now we can graph negative 1 and 4. So negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now negative 3, 12 is going to be off, and then we can graph 1, 4, and 2, 7. And if you notice, these points match up to each other. And that gives us our U shape, and it's going up because A is positive, meaning that our vertex is a minimum. So our vertex 0, 3 is our minimum point. Since A is positive, our graph is going up. So if we look at example 2, we have y equals negative x squared minus 4x minus 4. Well, we can label A, B, and C. Well, we can say that A is negative 1, B is negative 4, and C is also negative 4. So when we look at this, we want the axis of symmetry. So our axis of symmetry, x equals negative b over 2a. Negative b, it's going to be negative 4 over 2 times negative 1, which is 4 over negative 2, which is negative 2. So the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. So that's our straight line, x equals negative 2, going down, that the graph is going to fold over. So we have our axis of symmetry, and now we can find the vertex. So to find the vertex, we take our equation, which is y equals negative x squared minus 4x minus 4, and we plug in negative 2. So we get y equals negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 2 minus 4. So this is going to give us negative 2 squared is 4, so it's going to be negative 4, because this negative is going to be right there. And negative 2 squared is positive 4. Negative 4 times negative 2 plus 8 minus 4, and then negative 4 plus 8 minus 4, we get y equals 0. So now we have a vertex of negative 2, 0. So now we know the vertex, we know our axis of symmetry, and we also know that this is going to be a maximum because A is negative. Since that A is less than 0, it's going to make it be a maximum, or U shape is going to be going down. So now we can graph this. We can graph the vertex, which is negative 2, 0. So negative 2, 0 is here, and this line of symmetry means that we're going to have this dashed line that if we fold the graph over, it's going to match up. And once we look at our graph here, so we can go back to y equals, clear this, and type in negative x squared minus 4x minus 4. Now we look at our graph here, and see how the U shape is going down. That means that this is our maximum point. So that maximum point is negative 2, 0. So if we want to look at our graph here, our table, well, we know that the vertex is negative 2, 0. So we have negative 3 and negative 1. So negative 3, negative 1. Now I can put another point over here. Negative 4 and negative 4. And we can have negative 5, negative 9. So now we have these points here. And we have our axis line of symmetry. So if these points are going to match right up, so they're going to match right up with them. So if you would fold it over, this is 1 away, 2 away, and then this is 3 away. So they're going to match up. And we can look at our table, and we have negative 1, negative 1, 0, negative 4, and 1, negative 9. So that is the special thing about parabolas, because they have a U shape and they have that line of symmetry, so points match up with each other. And that's our graph. And if we look at the third example over here, So we have x squared plus 2x plus 3. Well, we can say that a equals 1, b equals 2, and c equals 3. So to find our axis of symmetry, we use this formula x equals negative b over 2a. So it's negative 2 over 2 times 1, which is negative 2 over 2. So our axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. So that's going to give us our straight line, our dashed line at negative 1, meaning our graph is going to fold over this line. That's our axis of symmetry. And then to find the vertex, well, the vertex, we have y equals x squared plus 2x plus 3, and x is negative 1, so it's y equals negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 3, 1 minus 2 plus 3, so y equals 2. So our vertex is negative 1, positive 2. So here's our vertex. A is positive, so this is a minimum point. And we'll notice that on our graph. So if we graph negative 1, 2, negative 1, negative 1, 2, we know that's our minimum, so it's going to make our U shape going up. So we can look at our graphing calculator, go to y equals, clear my equation, and now I have x squared plus 2x plus 3. So here's our graph. Now we can look at our table, and we can plot some points. So we have negative 3, 6, so negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and negative 2, 1, 2, 3. So we know that this side of the U looks like that. We can just match these up. So this goes up 1, left 1, well, we can go up 1, right 1, and that's the point 0, 3. And then we can go up over 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the point 1, 6. And then that's our graph. This is a minimum point because nothing's less than it, everything's above it. We have our vertex and our line of symmetry where we can fold the graph onto the other. So these are the three properties of the graph we talked about today. Was the axis of symmetry, which we use the formula x equals negative b divided by 2a. The vertex, well, we find the axis of symmetry, we plug it in, and we solve for y, and then we have our x, y coordinate point, which is the vertex. And if a is positive, it's a minimum value, and if a is negative, it's a maximum value. So that is starting to look at some properties of graphs.